Today we're talking about bad apologies. These are the ones that walk like an apology, they talk like an apology, but they're far from it. How do you react and what do you say? All that and more coming up. Welcome to the Jefferson Fischer podcast, where I'm on a mission to make your next conversation the one that changes everything. If you enjoy learning tools to improve your communication, I'm going to ask you to follow this podcast and please leave a review. If you have any topic suggestions or questions, just throw them in the comments. When someone gives you a bad apology, it's one of the most frustrating experiences because you want them to apologize and they know that you want them to apologize and they know that they could say the words and they might know deep down that they should, but they won't for lots of reasons. Maybe this person has narcissistic tendencies. Maybe this person is a very defensive behavior at the moment. And let's be honest, there's times where I just don't feel like apologizing right now. Maybe I will, but I don't feel like it in the moment. And maybe that's the same way with that other person. How do you handle a bad apology? There's two choices. You can either accept it or choose not to accept it. Too often there's the tendency to accept that apology and just move on. Just life goes on, you're going to accept it, be done with it, and get over it. Or you're not going to accept it and escalate the situation. You're going to say more things like, you don't even care about my feelings, whatever, I'm out. The fight or flight's going to kick in. You're going to say things that are more harmful and hurtful, or you're going to want to shut down and hang up the phone or leave the room. So it's these choices that I'm going to ask you to set aside and choose a different option. There's a third option, and that is to assertively stand your ground and ask for what is yours. And that is an apology if they're willing to give it. Some people aren't. But we're going to talk about that state of mind that you go into to understand, I hear what you're saying and that's not a genuine apology. Here's what I'm willing to accept. One of the most common culprits of bad apologies is, number one, the no apology. These are the type that say, well, I'm sorry if you feel that way. Ever heard somebody tell you that? I'm sorry you feel that way. And you're left standing there going, how do I respond to this? I'm going to tell you how. When somebody says, I'm sorry that you feel that way, you're going to respond, don't apologize for my feelings. Apologize for what you said. I'm going to say that again. The next time that somebody says, I'm sorry you feel that way. Yep, hey Jefferson, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. They tell you that, you're not going to accept it, and you're not going to escalate the situation. You're going to calmly respond, don't apologize for my feelings. Apologize for what you said. Here what you're saying is, don't apologize for my feelings. I got those. These are my feelings, and nobody needs to apologize for how I feel, let alone the person who has caused me harm or made the error. It should be your action that you're apologizing for. So you're calling them out and saying, no, I need you to take some accountability for what you said. And you say it in a way that says, no, I appreciate the thought. You don't need to apologize for my feelings. I need you to apologize for what you did, for what you said, for whatever it is. You're flipping the dynamic that takes away the power of their bad apology. Another very popular apology is the justification apology. This is where they blame what they did on something else. Maybe it's stress related to work. Maybe it's something else going in their life. And you typically hear it like this. This is number two. I'm sorry, I've just been so stressed lately. I'm sorry, I've just been so under the gun. I'm sorry, I've just been X, Y, and Z. Whenever you hear that, I'm sorry, and they're shifting the responsibility of what they did or what they said to you onto some third party, some external factor. When you hear that, you're going to, one, listen and calmly say, you don't need to apologize for your stress, but you do need to apologize for what you said to me. I need you to apologize for what you did. You see how you flip that dynamic? Instead of getting more upset and saying, what are you talking about? You haven't been stressed. Stressed? How about you walk a mile in my shoes and see how stressed I am. And you start comparing who's busiest and it goes south really quickly. So whenever they blame something, it's often stress. Say, I'm sorry, I've just been so stressed lately. I've just been so overwhelmed. Whenever you hear that, you sound a lot more calm and controlled when you say, you don't need to apologize for your stress. You don't need to apologize for the week that you've had, as if it's in an understanding way. They say, yeah, I get it. I'm not trying to doubt. I'm not trying to debate that you've had a hard week or that you've been stressed. Because if you start to challenge that, it's going to spiral down and it's not going to go well. Instead, you're just going to acknowledge it. Say, yeah, I understand. You don't need to apologize for your stress. I need you to apologize for what you just said. If you want this conversation to continue, I'm going to need you to apologize for what you just said, unless you meant it. And if you did, then we need to have a more serious conversation. See what I mean? A lot stronger. And number 3, another big major category of bad apologies are conditional ones. These are the ones that say, I'm sorry if you were offended by that. I'm sorry if you didn't like what I had to say. You've heard that before? I know that I certainly have. As you can imagine, between attorneys and phone calls and judges and hearings, there are a lot of bad, disingenuous apologies that get thrown around, especially right after saying something that's very inappropriate or impolite at the moment. So if you hear the phrase, I'm sorry if you were offended, I'm sorry if you didn't like what I had to say, you're going to go back to what we talked about in number 1 and calmly and coolly say, you don't need to apologize for my reaction. I need you to apologize for what you just said. See how you sound much more assertive, how you're leaning into it? See, most of the time if they say, well, I'm sorry if you were offended, you go into, well, I wasn't really offended, and you start trying to justify your feelings. You start trying to explain to them your feelings of how you meant in that moment and what they said and what they said meant to you. So often you can eliminate that altogether and flip the dynamic to say, you don't need to apologize for my reaction. Kind of like number 1, I got that. That's my reaction. I need you to apologize for what you just said. Or if they say, well, I'm sorry if you were upset, you can respond with, it's not an if, it's a that. You hear me? It's not an if, it's a that. It's a quick way to tell them, there's no if here. It's not, I'm sorry if I hurt you. It's, I'm sorry that. See the difference? Good. Now, almost every bad apology has a giveaway. You ready for it? Has a dead giveaway that you can tell right away it's not a good apology. They say, I'm sorry that you. Or I'm sorry if you. They rarely, by a few exceptions, will say, I'm sorry that I. The good apologies typically begin with, I'm sorry that I said that. They will take responsibility because they're using the word I. The ones that throw it back to say, I'm sorry that you, no, that's never going to go well in any circumstance. So you need to watch out for the case that when they say, I'm sorry that you feel